Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are having some wings. I have a few different kinds here, and then we have some veggies and some ranch. Let's see, we have salt and vinegar, honey barbecue, buffalo, Asian zing, mango habanero, and then carrots and celery. Today I'm also going to be doing a true crime, the murder, disappearance, and murder of Lacey Peterson. So yeah, but first let's eat. I like these ones. These ones are Asian zing. You guys, I've had a rough past couple of days. Honey barbecue. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can become an A-lister. Oh yeah, you know what? I haven't done a shout out video in a long time. So if you want a shout out, I'm going to pin a comment underneath this video. And then in my next video, whoever comments underneath that, I will give shout outs to. If you make videos, let me know. I just want to give appreciation to everybody who watches and comments. So, leave a comment underneath the pinned comment under this video if you want to shout out. Just to show appreciation. I'm so hungry, you guys. Actually, I haven't had wings in a long time. My last wing video is the last time I had wings. This is just water. Buffalo. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Lacey Peterson case. There's just so much. I was overwhelmed. So, if this true crime isn't very well detailed, I apologize. But this was a highly publicized case. I remember hearing about it when I was in high school. Oh, this is breading. This happened around Christmas time in 2002. Mango habanero. So, Lacey and Scott Peterson had been, by 2002, they had been married for 3 years. They were like the picture perfect couple. She was very outgoing, had a lot of friends, very headstrong. And she was also 8 months pregnant at this time. They had been trying for 2 years to conceive ever since they got married. They met in college. Scott worked at a bar that Lacey attended. They were both going to California Polytechnic University. And I guess Lacey made the first move. She saw Scott. She liked him. He was like the all-American boy. And so she left her number for him. But Scott just threw it away thinking it was a joke. And then Lacey went back and was like, why haven't you called me? And they started a relationship from then on. I could go into detail about, you know, their relationship, but it's irrelevant to the story. Scott did have an affair 2 times. I'm pretty sure it was before they got married, though. I feel like I'm chewing fast. Only because I want to get through everything. I don't want this video to be so long. Okay, so fast forward to December 2002. Lacey Peterson is a stay-at-home mom. She's a homemaker. She's pregnant with her first child. And Scott, he owns his own fertilizer business. So it's Christmas Eve. And they both wake up. They had plans to go over to Lacey's parents' house for Christmas Eve dinner. Scott decided he was supposed to go golfing, but he decided he was going to go fishing instead. Because it was raining that day. So he was going to go by his office, which is more like a storage shed. But he had his computer there, he had his boat there, and all his like fertilizer and stuff. It was like a warehouse. So Scott goes, he said he leaves his house between like 9:30 and 10 o'clock. And Lacey's plans for the day was to go take their dog for a walk, like she always does. So when I first heard about this case, immediately I thought to myself, on Christmas Eve, don't you want to be together as a family? Why are they separated? Why does he want to go fishing or golfing on Christmas Eve? You would think they would want to be together, you know? So Scott takes his boat an hour and a half away to San Francisco Bay. And he's out there for about 4 hours. He says he tried to call, and he called Lacey a few times, but she never answered. Called her cell phone, called her at the house, and she wasn't answering. But he didn't think anything of it, I guess. according to him. So he decides to start, you know, packing up and coming back home. And on the way home, he calls Lacey again. He leaves her a voicemail. And tells her he's on his way. And he's not going to be able to make it to some place to pick up something. And was asking if she would go do it. So he goes back to the warehouse, puts his boat away, and goes home. When he gets home, he realizes that Lacey's not there. Her car is still in the driveway. Her purse and keys are all still at home. But he thinks that she must have gone to her parents' house, or I don't know. He still isn't thinking anything's wrong. So he makes himself something to eat. I believe it was a pizza. Washes his clothes that he was wearing that day and takes a shower. Gets out of the shower. Lacey's still not home. So he calls her parents. Her stepdad answers, and right away Scott says Lacey's missing. He can't find her. She's not at home. And so Scott then said he's going to go to the park where Lacey would have walked their dog. Scott calls her friends. Nobody has seen her. Nobody's heard from her. So he goes to the park while her stepdad calls 911. Nobody can find her. So they take Scott in for questioning, just so they can rule him out right away. At the house, there was no evidence of any... There was no evidence of any break-in. There was no disturbance. No physical evidence of anything. She was just vanished, gone. And Scott, this whole time, he's just like nonchalant about everything. He's not crying. He doesn't really show any emotion. And to me, it's kind of strange. You know, if your pregnant wife is missing, you would be panicking, you know, like when he's being questioned about his whereabouts that day and going over like the timeline of events that day with the police. He's got his hands in his pocket. He's like slouched back, you know, comfortable, relaxed, and just not how you think your husband would react if you were missing, you know. Another strange thing is that right away when he called and talked to her stepdad or her parents, he said that she was missing. He automatically assumed she was missing. He didn't say, you know, I can't get a hold of her. You know, is she over there? You know, he just automatically said she's missing. And her parents thought that was strange too. So this case quickly becomes recognized by the media. It's all over CNN. It's all over the news across the country. Because here's this typical, you know, this good-looking couple. She's pregnant. She's gone missing. And this is all in Modesto, California. You know, they're like the all-American couple, you would assume. So it quickly goes all over the media. And they set up a search base at Red Lion Hotel. They were putting up all these pictures of Lacey. And any pictures that had Scott in them, he took them down. Because his excuse was that he didn't want to take away from Lacey. He only wanted her picture out there, you know. He didn't want to talk to any media. When the media would come, he didn't want to talk to them. The first night that he was questioned, he agreed to do a polygraph test. But then he consulted his dad about it, and his dad said it wasn't a good idea. So then he declined. So right away, the media put out that he wasn't cooperating with the police. Scott, he didn't want to be in the media. He didn't do any press conferences. All of that her parents did. December 26th, his home was searched. The next day, his warehouse was searched. And then they also go to the marina where he entered the San Francisco Bay Area, just to ask questions and see whether or not Scott was there, just to confirm his alibi. And Scott actually had a receipt. He showed that receipt the night that they questioned him. They're searching. By December 28th, they have moved the search to some wetlands where they thought maybe somebody could have put her body there. And at this time, there's a reward for her return, which is at $500,000. They're also bringing dogs in that to trace Lacey's scent, and one of the handlers of the dogs said that Lacey had to have left in a car. And the police are also getting tips saying that they saw Lacey walking their dog like between 10:30 and 10:45 in the part that she usually goes to. So there were sightings of her. She was wearing a white blouse with black leggings. And then they had the description of the dog, and multiple people called in reporting that they saw her that day. Then on New Year's Eve, there's a candlelight vigil held for Lacey. This whole time, Scott is avoiding the media. They hold the candlelight vigil, and during this whole time, investigators did not know that Scott was having an affair. So his mistress, Amber Frey, however you say it, she actually contacted the police. She called in on the tip line saying, Scott Peterson is my boyfriend. And this was before the candlelight vigil. So investigators got in touch with her, and she showed them pictures of them together, and they had been seeing each other for just over a month, maybe 2 months by that time, and Scott was still continuing to call her. So investigators had her wire her phone and record every phone conversation that they had when he would call her. And he called her that night, New Year's Eve night, at Lacey's candlelight vigil. And it's just amazing the lies that he put and how easily he did that. He basically told Amber that he was in Paris at the Eiffel Tower and that the crowds are big and he's with so-and-so, and just a bunch of lies. And the whole time he was there in Modesto, California at his missing wife's candlelight vigil. It's disgusting. More than 1,000 people attended that. There was a big turnout. So then on January 2nd, the police hold a press conference asking for anybody who has knowledge of Scott's whereabouts that day, basically just to verify that he was indeed at the marina in San Francisco Bay at the time that he said he was. So right then and there, the police put his alibi out to the public. I don't know. It's just everything in this case is just so crazy. When I saw the first documentary, I questioned whether or not Scott Peterson was guilty. But after finding out more information and hearing all the details that happened during court, I have come to the conclusion myself, I believe he is guilty. 100% I believe he is guilty, and you'll find out why. January 4th, divers searched the San Francisco Bay where Scott was, and they didn't find anything. And each time that Scott found out that they were going to be searching the bay where he was at, he would rent a car and go and watch them, which is suspicious. They confiscated his truck, they confiscated his boat. So I can see why he would rent a car, but he still had his wife's car. So it's a little weird that he would rent a car to go, you would think you wouldn't hide about that, you know? You would think, oh, they're searching for my wife. I need to be there in case they find something. You'd be out in the open. Why would you want to hide? But his excuses were all about the media. He didn't want to be seen in the media. On January 24th, the police call a press conference. So this whole time they've been doing searches. They haven't come up with anything. The media still doesn't know about Amber Frey. But somehow one news outlet gets a hold of a picture of Amber Frey and Scott Peterson. And they tell police that they're going to go with the story the very next day. So the police immediately hold a press conference, and there Amber Frey basically tells the whole world she's been seeing Scott Peterson. They had a romantic relationship, and that she wishes no harm on Lacey, and she's sorry for everything that's happened and hopes for her safe return. She said that she contacted police herself on December 30th, letting them know that she has been seeing Scott Peterson. Then at this time, Scott decides to contact Good Morning America. Who else? I think there was a few interviews that he did basically telling his story, and still he didn't really show any emotion. There were times that he would cry and like a tear would fall, but it wasn't sincere to me. It's kind of creepy going back and watching those interviews. It's really disturbing, actually. He said he didn't kill her. He had nothing to do with her disappearance. He's like so calm and like nonchalant about it, you know? He just wants her to be brought back home. This case reminds me a lot like the Chris Watts case. A lot of similarities. So police search Scott Peterson's home again. They're continuing to do searches, and they still can't find any evidence. They end up getting over 8,000 tips into the tip line. Some of the tips, the Modesto Police Department called back. Some they didn't. So fast forward to April 13th, 2003. There's a baby found in the same area where Scott Peterson was fishing. The next day, there's a woman's body that washed up, April 14th, in the same area that Scott Peterson was fishing in. Now, during this time, Scott Peterson is down in San Diego where he grew up. His family lives down there. He has dyed his hair. He's grown a goatee. He's found with, I want to say, over $10,000 in cash. Multiple exchanges of clothes and different types of shoes, as if he was going to be running away. You know, San Diego is really close to the border, but he lived in San Diego, so he had a reason to be down there. He was there with his family. He had his brother's ID on him. I don't know why he had his brother's ID on him. I think he said his brother left it, and he was, that day that the police arrested him, he was on his way to the golf course, and he said he dyed his hair because he wanted a disguise to kind of keep away from the media, because as you can imagine, like every news outlet wanted an interview with him. They wanted, you know, he was almost like a celebrity at this point. So yeah, a woman's body washes up April 14th. They take it in for DNA testing. They didn't think there was going to be enough DNA. I'm not sure if there was. I know that there was enough on the baby. But either way, the cause of death was inconclusive. There wasn't enough body to tell what the cause of death was. But ultimately it turned out to be Lacey Peterson and her baby, Connor. Is it a coincidence that their bodies washed up in the same exact area that Scott said he was the day they went missing? I don't know. Some people think that if it wasn't him, you know, his alibi, his whereabouts were publicized. So if it was somebody else, they would have been watching the news and been like, oh, he was here, let's frame him, you know? And that's what Scott tried saying. But he didn't come clean about his affair to begin with. I don't know. Okay, so he's arrested and he's booked and charged on 2 counts of capital murder. And of course, Scott pleads not guilty. So they end up going to trial, not for a few years. Scott gets a very good lawyer that knows how to deal with the media, and he's worked on other high profile cases, so he was a very good lawyer for Scott to have hired. Now the prosecution, in their beginning argument, they said Scott killed Lacey the night before Christmas Eve. That morning he wrapped her body in a tarp, put her in the back of his truck, went to his warehouse, put her body in the boat, went to the marina, and was there. That's where he dumped her body. Everything that the prosecution had as evidence was all circumstantial. There was no hard evidence, there was no blood, there was no DNA, there was just circumstantial evidence. In my opinion, there's too many coincidences for him not to have done it. Some of the tips came in. So Scott said he left between like 9:45 and 10 o'clock that morning of Christmas Eve. And the tips that came in that claimed that they had seen Lacey Peterson that day walking her dog in the park was right around 10:30. So that would assumingly put Scott as being innocent. If she was seen alive at 10:30 walking around the park, that's the same time that Scott was at his warehouse. And we know Scott was at his warehouse because he got online and he sent an email. He like checked his email and sent an email. But those people were never subpoenaed to come in and testify that they had seen her. So it was never brought up in court. So the jurors never saw that. Also, their dog Roscoe, the next door neighbor, had seen the dog out roaming around in their yard with a leash on, which has happened before. So the neighbor didn't think anything of it, and she said this was around 10:15 a.m. She didn't see Lacey anywhere, but she just, put the dog back in the backyard with a leash on and went about her day. And she had receipts of her errands that she had ran that day, so that she put the time at about 10:15. Well, assuming that Lacey was already kidnapped or whatever happened to Lacey was already done by that time, that doesn't put Scott as being innocent. That would mean that the person that people claim to have seen at the park walking their dog was not Lacey. Maybe somebody that was just wearing the same clothes as her that day, or, looked similar to her. But then the mailman, so at 10:15, the neighbor put the dog in the backyard. The mailman comes at 10:30. I guess the Petersons had a package that day, so they scan the mailman's, it scans it and it'll show the time that he was there delivering the package. And all mailmans, they know their route, they know what dogs are on their route. And he said that Roscoe, whether he's in the house or outside, always barks at him. Whenever he comes, he's always barking. But that day, he wasn't barking. So that either means that Lacey indeed was out on a walk at 10:30 walking Roscoe, but Roscoe wasn't there, which is a little suspicious. So that's one thing that is like, well, Lacey must have still been alive. She had to have been walking the dog, just like all the people who called in at the tip line. So you would think, it's this, see, I'm still like, there's too many coincidences, Like, yeah, maybe she was still alive, but I still think he had something to do with her disappearance. Whether he physically did it or he had some help. That's the only thing I can think of. Another thing is that same day that she was reported missing, there was a house. The house right across the street from them had been burglarized. The 2 people that were arrested for it claimed that it was on December 26th. A lady driving by who happened to see that something was suspicious, and she drove by. She seen the guys at the van. They both looked at her. She thought it was kind of odd, because she had never seen the van, and that was on Christmas Eve, the day that Lacey went missing. But when the two men were arrested, they said it happened on the 26th in the early hours of the morning. Well, by that day, news reporters were there on the street, pretty much camped out. If there was a burglary, somebody would have seen it. The news reporters would have seen it. But police just chopped it up and said that, it happened on the 26th. So it didn't even come to play at the trial. There's a lot of things that could prove his innocence if there was evidence for it, Also, with the two guys that burglarized the house in front of the Peterson's house, there was a lieutenant, I believe, who was monitoring phone calls at the prison where where one of the burglars was, and he overheard a phone conversation about the burglary, and I believe it was the brother was on the other line and was like, what if they ask me questions about the pregnant lady? And the guy that was in prison, I forget their names, but he was like, shut up, don't say another word, don't you know this phone call is being recorded? And so the lieutenant immediately reported it to the Modesto Police Department. I guess they gave a tape over, they had the recording, they gave the tape over to the police department, but that tape cannot be found. It's recorded, because they record everything, each piece of evidence is recorded and logged, but they can't find the tape. During the trial, all of the phone conversations between Scott Peterson and Amber Frey were recorded, and they played those all during the trial. This is where, when I say there's too many coincidences in this case for him to not be guilty, this is what I mean. 2 days before he bought the boat. Okay, so in one of the phone conversations, Amber is confronting Scott. Scott had told her that this would be his first holidays without his wife. Basically, Scott, when they got together, Scott had told Amber that he lost his wife, and this would be the first holidays without him. He told her that on December 9th, before she even went missing. So Amber's thinking, loss as in like she passed away or something, So when Amber found everything out, she confronted Scott about it and was like, you said you lost your wife and this was your first holidays without her. You told me that on December 9th. What do you mean by loss? How does that happen? And all of a sudden she's gone missing. Like, can you explain that to me? And he basically says, Amber, there's different types of loss, and tries to smooth talk his way out of it like he always does, give some BS lie. That was on December 9th. Now, he bought his boat. Lacey's parents say that Lacey didn't even know about the boat. But then there's the manager of the warehouse. She claims that she saw Lacey there, so Lacey had to have known about the boat. So there's, differences in stories there. Whether she knew about the boat or not, I don't know. But 2 days before Scott bought the boat, he was searching up not tides, but currents, different currents in the San Francisco Bay Area. That was before he even had the boat. So that was on December 7th. On December 9th, is the day that he bought the boat. The same day that he told Amber that his wife went missing, that he lost his wife. Now, to me, that sounds like premeditation. 100% to me. You buy a boat. Why would you buy the boat? I mean, obviously to go fishing. A normal person buys a boat to go fishing. But on that same day, he's claiming that he's telling his mistress that he lost his wife. So he's already like mentally preparing himself to lose his wife, because I don't think it's that much of a coincidence that you tell your mistress you're losing your wife and then all of a sudden she goes missing 2 weeks later. That does, it just doesn't make sense. And then for their bodies to show up in the same exact spot that he was fishing, no. There's also evidence that the night that he went home after being interviewed, he ordered some adult channels, and to me that just doesn't sound like the actions of a man who thinks his wife is coming home, because Lacey wouldn't, they had never purchased those types of channels before, and if you know your wife isn't coming home and you want to watch those types of channels, you're gonna buy those. Those are the actions of a single man who knows his wife isn't coming home. Once I heard that Scott told Amber he lost his wife the same day that he bought the boat, 2 days after he was searching currents, that just like sealed it for me. Like, done, he's guilty. 100%. There's just way too many coincidences. But I honestly think that if he didn't physically do it himself and Lacey was seen, then he had help doing it. 100%. If he didn't do it himself, he had help doing it. And he knew where she was the whole time, and he knew she wasn't coming back. So the trial lasted a long time. He was found guilty. They put the death penalty on, so he's in San Quentin sitting on death row, but he still claims his innocence, and he's filing an appeal. And now it's in California Supreme Court, and supposedly there's new evidence, lots of new evidence, and he's also claiming that he didn't get a fair trial because of the jury selection. It was too close to home and his case was highly publicized and it needed to be further out, which I do agree with that part. I think the jurors on that case during the trial, it was personal for them. Some of them, like, there was a whole dilemma with the jurors. Some of them had to be kicked off. They had to bring in new jurors. Even after the trial was over and done, they had to bring in new jurors, because, jurors aren't supposed to be talking about the case, be looking it up or anything. It's crazy. The way the jurors reacted afterwards, you could tell it was personal for them, and they had convicted him before the trial even started. There's so much more evidence. But yeah, there's a lot of information you can find online here on YouTube, the documentaries, on ID Discovery, there's A&E, there's a lot of them. And I'm sure there's a lot of evidence that I still haven't found out, that I still haven't researched, but it's out there somewhere. So I pray to God that the truth comes to light, and if his conviction is overturned, I hope that they go to a retrial and he's convicted. Honestly, I feel like maybe he shouldn't have gotten the death penalty because there wasn't that solid evidence. It was all just circumstantial evidence, but very credible circumstantial evidence. I just feel like there wasn't enough evidence to sentence him to death. That's just my personal opinion. You can disagree if you like, that's fine. But to sentence somebody to death when there's no physical evidence, no DNA, nothing to physically tie him to the crime except circumstantial evidence, he was at the right place at the right time, for him to have committed this murder, or, the bodies were found where they were and the whole affair and everything. It's just a very sad case. Very confusing also. I'm still it's just a very complicated case, but I believe he's guilty. So yeah, if you guys know more about this case and you want to put some more information that that you think was significant to this case so that everybody can read it down below, go ahead and do that. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.